Welcome to my presentation about the right to repair movement. Today we will be going over the interested parties in the right to repair movement and how the right to repair movement impacts you as a consumer as well as the companies who make the products that you consume. So in this section we'll be going over a little bit of history and why the right to repair movement is so important in today's society and how it's going to affect us in the future. So the right to repair movement is a pretty simple premise. It's designed to protect the rights of the consumer to be able to choose how to repair their own devices. So, say I have a phone or a laptop that the battery's not holding a charge as well as it should have. I can go find replacement parts either from the manufacturer or from a third party, and I am able to either repair the device myself or send it to a third party repair shop or organization to be able to get it fixed for me and then sent back to me. Basically, it's advocating the ability of the consumer to choose where they want to send their own devices to get repaired. So there's two sides to this debate. So advocates, we're starting to see over the past couple years, since about 2020, the right to repair movement has really picked up in governmental support. So we've seen many states try to introduce right to repair legislation. I think there's between 10 and 15 states this year who have introduced or have talked about some sort of right to repair legislation through their Congress. And then 5 U.S. states have passed right to repair legislation, and we'll get into a little bit of the specifics of what states have passed what and what that entails, just so you can get some idea of um, what's happening right now and how it might affect you. And then you also have pro right to repair organizations like repair.org and iFixit, who are advocates of this and have lobbied states to start introducing right to repair legislation, have lobbied manufacturers to allow consumers to have parts, etc. And then opponents, many manufacturers oppose right to repair legislation oftentimes because it does hurt their bottom line at times because they're not allowed to charge full price for the replacement parts if they're, being outsourced to a third party. But we'll get into how that all works and fits into this in a second. So, why is right to repair important? We've kind of uh, skirted around this a little bit. So, devices are becoming increasingly more difficult to repair. So, in addition to becoming, more complex, manufacturers are starting to institute methods that prevent consumers from repairing their devices with tools that they would have on hand. So, limiting access to repair tools and only giving them to, authorized repair providers, that are company repaired, like, stores that sell your products. They're the only ones that can have the tool to open it or whatever. And then, or having like specific connectors or, non-standard parts. For example, like if you wanted to take the battery and replace it out of a MacBook, you need a special Apple design screwdriver or a special Apple design screwdriver bit, excuse me, in order to open that. So something that a consumer often isn't going to have on hand and is going to have to go out and buy. And then also, manufacturers are actively oftentimes preventing repair organizations from having information about the product and how to service it. So, third party repair shops and organizations like iFixit, which is sells or provides consumers with manufacturers and repair tools and repair guides and that sort of thing. And then, for example, additionally, suppliers for the company are prevented from taking orders from individual shops. So, like, say you're a third party repair shop, Say you're looking to order some parts for a product, you're unable to build a stockpile, you're unable to buy it anywhere but directly from the manufacturer, and oftentimes those manufacturers will prevent you from doing bulk orders. And instead, you'll have to order a part every time that a customer needs it. So that's going to put a big hamper on your ability to repair as a whole because you're going to be backlogged because you have to wait until you get a broken device and then you have to wait the time to get the part shipped to you. Um, and then additionally, companies also have sometimes these like authorized provider programs that have, specific stringent requirements that like data collection from customers and what you can um, get parts for, etc. And then the increasingly there has been some issues with like the planned obsolescence manufacturing issues. That doesn't happen on every product, but on occasion you see some design flaws in products that have existed for multiple years and don't seem to get fixed, or if it's a known issue and it's broken, sometimes the repair program doesn't cover all the devices that are impacted and not, yeah, and not covering them all. And then increasing difficulty of repair, just to go into that. So some non-standard things that make repairing devices more difficult. For example, you can see in this image in the upper right here, those are the pentalobe screws. So those are the screws that are the specific type of screw that you need a specific screwdriver for to open. Additionally, sometimes you have devices that have a specific connector between components that isn't standard, and then you have items in the device that are glued down that don't really need to be. For example, in the iPhone, the battery is glued down with pretty strong adhesive, so it's pretty difficult to get in there and pull it out in order to effect a repair. Additionally, say your motherboard on this MacBook that I have on the in the bottom right here, that's a 2021 MacBook Pro. If you for some reason have an issue with the motherboard, which contains all your components basically required to make the computer run, your motherboard, your CPU, your RAM, um, if you have an issue with that, you're going to have to replace the entire board, not an individual component. And that's the only way they offer it. And the unfortunate thing is that raises the entire price of the repair option, sometimes even close to the cost of just buying a new computer instead of just replacing oftentimes one component that's failed. Um, Additionally, if say you have a phone that has the battery going on it and you get another device that has a good battery, you oftentimes can't swap that over because the device is the part is locked down to the device it originally came from, and when you put it into a new one, it'll have limited functionality. And additionally, as we touched on earlier, it's becoming more and more difficult for independent repair shops and organizations to get the information about how to repair their devices. So sometimes they're kind of on their own in terms of figuring out how to do repairs. And the major issue with some of this that we had talked about on the previous slide is, say you're throwing away a motherboard when it could just be one little chip that is broken on it. So this is part of what kind of leads into this is that basically if you're recycling all of those materials, that can end up as e-waste. So in 2022, approximately 136 trillion pounds of electronic waste were generated. And then the super unfortunate thing is only 22.3% of the waste was recycled. And the triply unfortunate thing is this value includes improperly recycled products, so that are marked as recycled, but the materials are not responsibly disposed of as they should be. So you're letting stuff into the ground, soil, atmosphere, even. So lead, which can lead to contamination of water, and like plastics, which take thousands of years to dispose. Um, and then we question, why it's so difficult to recycle products. So that is something that should also be looked at in terms of this right to repair thing. But I believe that if we institute more stringent right to repair right to repair legislation, and the movement gains more ground, we're able to reduce the amount of e-waste that we're generating, and therefore are able to reduce our amount of contamination on the environment. And then another problem with the amount of e-waste is that consumer culture likely has to change, because right now surveys have shown that 47% of consumers, according to a study in Germany, prefer to just buy a new device instead of simply taking the time to repair it. And most of the time, that's a convenience thing, is because they don't have access to those repair options, or they take too long. And then an actually good step forward for this is the Apple Recycling Program, which has a lot of benefits, and they release a detailed report. It's about 120 pages every year of how they're committed to reducing the carbon footprint of their products, and how they recycle the components on devices that they get back and um, are recycled. So, overall history of the right to repair movement. So, 1972, we have the Consumer Product Safety Commission established, which has jurisdiction over all the consumer products and sets standards for them. And then a major case that kind of sets up some of the future right to repair things is the Kodak 1992 Kodak case, where the Ninth Circuit United States Court found that Kodak adopted policies that limited the availability of replacement parts for their products, which was found to be in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act, which prevents companies from squashing any type of competition in the marketplace. And then 1999, another critical case that kind of sets us up for where we are today is the 1999 Digital Millennium Copyright Act, that basically says that consumers can repair their own devices as long as they're not violating copyright protected content like digital materials, which would include like movies, videos, etc. And then another major one, the first one here that has right to repair in the name, which is the Motor Vehicle Repair Act, which is designed to stop car manufacturers from maintaining the control of information that repair shops have that are not associated with the manufacturer of the vehicle. So, you know, asking for information about um, cars and consumer data. And then 2013 present, we've seen the right to repair movement become more and more commonplace, more and more active, putting pressure on companies and lawmakers to enforce the ability of consumers and repair organizations to repair devices. So, the right to repair movement today. So, the governmental action piece of the right to repair movement here. So, 46 states have discussed or attempted to pass right to repair legislation. This map on the right doesn't show 46 states right now, but that's just the states that hanging in red is states that have considered it this year. And the states in black are the states that have some type of active right to repair legislation. So the 5 states include California, New York, Colorado, Minnesota, Oregon. So California has probably the most comprehensive right to repair legislation, which requires manufacturers to provide information required to repair a product for between 3 and 7 years, depending on the value of the product. So for 3 years, if you're buying something that's under $50, the manufacturer must provide um, documentation on how to repair that, and then if it's over 50, up to 7 years. And then in New York, which passed their law in 2022, this was the first law, um, right to repair law in the United States that was signed into law, which this law requires every electronic manufacturer to provide consumers and repair organizations with the tools and information needed to adequately repair their products. Colorado in 2022 passed legislation to protect consumers' right to repair wheelchairs, and later in 2023, the legislation was amended to also include tractors and farm equipment. In Minnesota in 2023, they also passed a right to repair law, which mandates that manufacturers provide support services to repair shops for repairing the products, including replacement tools and parts. And then in Oregon in 2024, the right to repair law actually included a critical piece that we had gone over on a couple previous slides, is the practice of parts pairing, where if you swap a part from a different device in, it may lock the device or reduce functionality in some way. This law does prevent that, prevents locking parts unless they are repaired in a store by the manufacturer. And then many other states in the country are considering right to repair legislation this year. This graph is from repair.org, as is a lot of the information on some of the preceding slides, as they have a lot of good information in terms of um, problems and how the movement has progressed in the past couple years. So corporate action based on some of this legislative pressure is a lot of companies have launched self-repair options. So for example, Apple launched its own self-service repair program due to pressure from both legislative um, action and right to repair advocates. So this program covers replacement um, of repairing certain parts of devices. So it'll send you the new piece of the device, so say a camera module or a battery. Also requires consumers allows for consumers to purchase parts and tools to do the repair themselves. And then Samsung also launched a self-repair option in 2022, where they partnered with iFixit to provide pretty comprehensive manuals and repair parts. And you can see screenshots in the bottom left of Apple's website, where they have their manuals for their iPhone and their repair, and that's for any consumer for free to can go look at that. And then Samsung on iFixit's website has their devices that they have through that program. So how can we ensure that right to repair is accessible for everyone? So we can increase the availability of repair options for both consumers and repair shops and organizations, ensuring that they have easily accessible repair parts and easily accessible instructions. And how can this be achieved? Through continued advocacy of the right to repair movement, focus on companies that do not support the right to repair, and then continued passage of right to repair legislation by the states and maybe even national government. So here are my sources. Thank you.